Our first action item of the evening is our high school math adoption, and I believe that Ms. De La Fuente, Ms. Santorno has some remarks and introduction.
We're going to start with Ms. Ana Maria De La Fuente, but I wanted to just start and to say that I know the board members have been very generous with their praise of Ana Maria, but I wanted to take an opportunity to, again, just to thank her for the work that she's done during this math adoption. She has gotten lots of accolades from the public and from the board and from her staff. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew this was a daunting first task for a new math manager, and she's handled it so well. She's answered every question thoroughly. She's answered emails, and she has remained positive through this whole thing and committed. And I just wanted to make sure that Ana Maria knows how much we appreciate her work and the work of her staff.
Thank you, Carla. I'd like to introduce Greta Bornemann, who's the Director of Mathematics Teaching and Learning, and is here to give us an update on the state process. We've been talking to you about state recommendations, reports, things like that, and so she's here just to give you a brief update about that process. And then if there are questions before your decision is made, I'll be happy to answer those. I do want to emphasize that Ms. Bornemann is here to talk about the process, not to advocate for textbooks or to she's just here to clarify how the state process is going. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Bornemann. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Members of the board, I am Greta Bornemann. I am the Director of Math for Teaching and Learning at OSPI. And I am here to talk about the process that we've gone through throughout the state of Washington. And this has been a long process. It started more than a year ago, actually, with our K-8. And it all came about because of legislative action, and it's fairly prescribed. It is that, and I'm sure that you're familiar with some of this language, but that the Superintendent of Public Instruction shall recommend no more than 3 basic curricula for the elementary, middle, and high school grade stands. Then 2 months after that, within 2 months, the State Board of Education shall provide comment and recommendations to the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and then the superintendent shall make final recommendations based on those recommendations and comments from the state board. And here, I guess part of it is off the screen, but you can see the timeline. And I have this up just to emphasize the length that we've been engaged in this process. This has been a significant portion of my work and of the state board's work and the state board math panel's work. There have been literally hundreds of people involved in this process, with the main focus on our instructional materials review. We call it the IMR, so when you see those abbreviations, that's what it's indicating. The instructional materials review was done as a very rigorous, transparent, and inclusive process to determine which curricula align to our newly revised state standards. We began this work as soon as the revised state standards were approved. K-8, that was done in April. High school was done, those standards were approved in July. So that's the 2 different timetables. In science, they're just embarking on their instructional materials review next week, and they're going to do K-12 all at one time. So they will go through this process also. I'm not going to go through the different parts, but you can see in the lower bottom corner, May 4th, just on Monday, OSPI finalized our high school recommendations. We began this work really with the standards in July. We did our review work, our extensive review in November, and now we're at the point where we're ready to we just made our final recommendations. So I'm going to spend a period of time talking about that, the instructional materials review, and because that is the bulk of the work that was done. And it really comes down to our standards. We were asked to do this work because of the newly revised standards, and these standards are more rigorous and carefully created with a strong input from both mathematicians, with math educators, and with the State Board of Ed and the State Board of Ed's math panel's input. They are a strong set of standards, and they are the basis for our instructional materials review. So our goal in that work was to determine our alignment. In order to do this work, we were working in consultation with the State Board of Ed's math panel. They helped us, and other advisory groups and stakeholders also gave input. They helped us determine the weighting of the criteria and our other factors. The review committee was selected through a highly qualified committee, was selected through a competitive process that included K-12 educators, mathematicians, community representatives, administrators, and parents. I wish everybody could see that work and happen. And in fact, there are members of our audience here that had participated in that review process. It is an intensive week-long review. There was a lot of measures taken to reduce bias, to provide transparency to the process. These reviewers worked at sometimes between 6 in the morning till 9 at night all week. There were check-ins throughout the week. It was just an incredible giving moment from our Washington State educators, parents, mathematicians. Quite impressive. Once we took the data in, we sought the State Board of Ed's math panel, their input on this process. We presented the preliminary results to various stakeholders, and we did our own mathematicians' review of that work, where they looked at functions and proof in those programs that aligned most highly with the newly revised state standards. Superintendent Dorn made his initial recommendations on his second day of office on January 15th, and he recommended HOLT, Discovering, and Core Plus as the initial recommendations to the State Board of Ed. The State Board of Ed took those recommendations and they added in a fourth bundle, which was Glencoe, which turned out to be next on the third in the bundled and the composite score as a bundle. And so they looked at those four. The State Board of Ed's consultants, mathematician, looked at those also for mathematical soundness. Before they began the work, the State Board of Ed's consultant acknowledged the strength of the OSPI alignment review of these programs. There is no argument about the alignment and the strength of the alignment. And one of the strongest aspects that we can hold on to is the strong alignment that the high school texts have to our newly revised state standards. That is something that we didn't necessarily find in the elementary or middle, but we have up until, if you look at the report, the 6 or so in each of the algebra and geometry have very good alignment, and we were very pleased with the strength of the alignment to our strong state standards. The board came back and looked at all the work that was done and recommended that OSPI and the State Board of Ed hire additional independent mathematicians to conduct a final review of the top 7 programs that most strongly align to the standards for their mathematical soundness. As you are probably aware, because of unprecedented fiscal situation, there is no money to be able to do an independent review. We tried to even look at funds from a private source, and it was not able to be secured. So Superintendent Dorn on Monday made his final high school recommendation, which is HOLT Mathematics. What I would like to emphasize is that these recommendations serve as a guide to school districts in the state of Washington. OSPI recommends the math curriculum based on this process, but does not direct which curriculum a school district may or should select. Superintendent Dorn's final high school recommendations are based on both the work of OSPI and the State Board of Ed as directed by the legislature. So finally, it is important to note, with these strongly aligned to our rigorous standards, there are many successful mathematics programs that may exist in virtually all the reviewed curricula. While instructional materials matter, other factors contribute to the success of students learning mathematics in Washington State. These factors include quality of instruction, parental involvement, available supports, and numerous other aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Director Mayer.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I have a question about slide 6. If you can put that up, please. These were the initial recommendations, the 3 Holt, Discovering, and Core Plus, initially recommended by the superintendent. And on this slide, for Holt and for Discovering, it says type of program, traditional, AGA.
Sure.
And I wonder if you can describe what that means.
Absolutely.
And then there's Core Plus, Math, Integrated, and that's distinguished.
But thank you for that question. That's a very good question. I probably should have addressed that. There are 2 sets of standards at the high school. There is a series for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, and there is a series for integrated. Essentially, they are the same exact performance expectations, the same exact standards, but in different order, rearranged. 40%, approximately, 40% of our students in the state of Washington use the integrated sequence. About 60% use the traditional sequence, the students in our state. So the traditional represents the bundle that aligned to the traditional sequence. So when publishers submitted their materials, they determined, do we want to represent our materials aligned to the traditional or the integrated? And the reviewers either were traditional or integrated, although we had some that did both. Does that help you? So AGA represents algebra, geometry, algebra 2. And the integrated sequence would we typically call math 1, 2, and 3.
Director Carr.
Thank you for that explanation. While you're still on that slide, could you talk a bit about the final composite score and just provide an overview for everyone what that's about and some background on that, please?
Sure, that is another good question. The final composite score was based on a 70% alignment weighting and a 30% of other factors. The other factors were things like equity and access, assessments, other things that the reviewers judged on their professional knowledge of education and students and learning. So the weighting together was combined and gave a final composite score. A .838 then represents that weighting. Okay?
No further questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Bornemann.